Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Step by Step. Today I'm going to bring you a small tournament report from the League Cup that I won with Garbodor Trevenant, so I hope you enjoy. So the meta was very diverse. There were 21 players with 15 different decks, so that's really cool. It was 30 minutes best of one, so I think that's why we see so many Sylveon being played. It was a little bit of an interesting call to play Sylveon. I guess maybe they figured they could win one game in 30 minutes and then I don't know how they would win in Top Cut though, but anyways, it was an interesting call. None of them made Top Cut, and we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute as far as what did make Top Cut. 2 Volcanion, which were a really good play, 2 Garbodor Drampa, which, I mean, is good enough to make Top Cut, but I think we've seen from the regionals in England and the regionals in Wisconsin that, I mean, it can get in there, but at this point in the meta, I don't think it's going to go very far. We've got Zoroark, Drampa, Tapu Koko promo, which is a really good deck that I saw for the first time this weekend. And I'm going to do another video later this week discussing the meta, and we'll go over some of this stuff too, including that deck that recently just came out. Then you had me with Trevenant Garbodor. There was a Toxapex deck, a Tapu Bulu Venusaur, a Turbo Darkrai, which is actually interesting. In the right meta, it can be really successful. There was a Decidueye, Ninetales, a Lurantis, and shout out to one of our subscribers and viewers, the YouTuber PokeDad. Actually built his list. I think he said it was about 55 cards, the same from one of our videos, and that had the Lurantis GX Lurantis promo list in it, so that was really cool. It was really nice to meet him. He's a really good player, and he made Top Cut with it too, so that was really awesome. It's crazy that out of all the people in the world who could subscribe to a YouTube channel, that you meet someone who is inspired by one of your videos and played a deck that we discussed at my own local tournament, so that was awesome. Okay, so I finished Swiss 302. We had 5 rounds of the top 8. I think I finished in second, I think. Yeah, I think I finished second. There was one guy who was 401. So I played against, well, I'll have to go into more of what I played against in a minute, but you can kind of see how everything went. Darkrai versus Garbodor Drampa, Turbo Darkrai won. Garbodor Trevenant versus Ninetales, Garbodor Trevenant won. Darkrai versus Garbodor Trevenant won, but barely. I'll go into that in a minute. Then on the left side of the bracket, Garbodor Drampa versus Zoroark Drampa Tapu Koko, and Zoroark Drampa won that. Lurantis versus Volcanion won that. Then Zoroark Drampa played Volcanion, and it was like kind of on time. Zoroark Drampa won that one. It was a really, really crazy match that ended up going to sudden death, 1 prize, and then playing an end. So both players had 1 card. Then the Zoroark Drampa used Big Wheel and got set up to take a knockout in the sudden death. So that was a really crazy game. And then of course I played Garbodor Trevenant, and then in the finals ended up beating Zoroark Drampa. So that was really cool. Interesting playoff bracket. I really do think the 8 best decks of the tournament made it into the top 8. It's interesting to see Garbodor Drampa not get past the first round. So I won 24 packs, and I guess a Decidueye mat that'll get here eventually. Is it even Decidueye still? I don't know. But it'll get here eventually. Nintendo hadn't sent them out, or whoever, Pokemon hadn't sent them out. I don't know. And 50 championship points. But this is what I got out of my packs, which was pretty cool, because I didn't have a promo Tapu, or excuse me, I didn't have a Tapu Koko yet, or a Wishy-Washy, or a Sylveon, so it was cool to get 3 GXs that I didn't actually own. I already had a playset of Metagross and Lycanroc, but hey, it's always nice to get some extra stuff. And then let's take a look at what I actually played against and my actual list. So, round 1, I beat a Lycanroc Lugia. It was kind of a newer player. Round 2, I beat the Lurantis deck that I mentioned earlier. That's how I met the subscriber, PokeDad. Round 3, I played a really close game versus Greninja. Greninja's a closer game than it should be for this deck. It's just always going to play out that way and be super close. And then, because of the way Swiss works now, it's kind of silly, but I intentionally drew with a Darkrai and then intentionally drew with Garbodor Drampa. You win your first 3 games in a 5-round Swiss, and then ID the last 2, and you're in Top Cut guaranteed. So, in top 8, I played against the Ninetales deck, which was a really close game as well. I won game 1, they won game 2, I won game 3. Basically, I had to come from behind in game 3. The concept there was just to kind of let Ninetales use a lot of their resources, get it to a point where I could end them after they discarded some energies to get a knockout. I had to end them to 3, knock out their only Ninetales, and then kind of leave them in a place where they couldn't come back. But that was like my first knockout of the game, so I had to really climb back in that match. Top 4, I got super lucky against Turbo Dark. That's a really, really bad matchup for this deck. So it resists Garbodor. Garbotoxin doesn't do anything. You have to get lucky with Trevenant to win that. And thankfully for me, I did. I lost game one. Game two, I won very, very early on. I was able to get a Poltergeist knockout on a Darkrai. My opponent had 5 supporters or something in their hand, and I had a Fighting Fury or a Fighting Fury belt. Yeah, right. I had a choice band to get the knockout, and then so that kind of gave me a pretty much a jump start in that matchup. Then in game three, the same thing happened. They took a prize. They only had 4 trainers in their hand. Took a prize, drew a 5th one, and then with Trevenant, you just kind of have to go with your gut. It's not super scientific. You have to know when you need it and then just go for it. So I just went for it and hoped that they had pulled a trainer off of their prize, and they had, with a band, got a one-shot on a Darkrai. So I got super lucky in top 4 to win that match. It was a really good player, really good opponent. And honestly, if it hadn't been for that luck, I think he probably would have won the tournament. In top 2, I played against Zoroark, Drampa, Tapu Koko promo. That was the deck that I mentioned earlier that was fairly new this weekend, and that found some success at the Wisconsin Regionals. I believe it got top 4. But this was a super close game. The Tapu Koko promo spreads 20 or 40, however long it survives, to everything, and then Zoroark Mind Jacks to clean up, or Drampa Berserks to hit stuff that Mind Jack might not be able to take care of. So really tough matchup. Basically, I just had to get a couple of well-timed Poltergeists and then hope at the end of the game there was enough items for Garbodor to clean up. So Trevenant and Garbodor obviously paired really well together and got the job done. People would hold on to their item cards, and Trevenant would take advantage of it. Or if they got tired of that and they kind of had to play some things out, Garbodor would take advantage of it. So it was a really successful day for Garbodor Trevenant. Now, as far as my list is concerned, I ran a 2-1 Flareon because when I walked into the tournament, everybody was playing Solgaleo, Metagross, Decidueye. Like, that's all I saw that people were practicing with before the tournament started. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't win versus those decks without a Flareon. So I added the Flareon, and then everyone went away from playing those decks. Aside from like the 2 Decidueyes and the 1 Lurantis, but there were no metal decks played at all. And even in the matchup when I played against Lurantis, unfortunately, Pokedad, the YouTuber that I mentioned earlier, it didn't draw super well in that matchup. So I mean, the Flareon didn't even matter. So the 2-1 Flareon was a waste of space in this tournament. The second Shaymin was a waste of space. So basically, I just discarded my Shaymins the entire tournament and would just save 1 for like an emergency situation when I didn't get the energy that I needed. Then I would just like rescue stretcher it out or ultra ball for it or whatever I had to do to get the card that I was missing. But other than that, running a second Shaymin was really, really pointless. The 2 Tapu Lele was really all that I needed. Even having Tapu Lele on the field sometimes felt like a little too much prize equity that I just didn't want to give up. So that was kind of interesting. I'm definitely going to cut a Shaymin out of the list. I'll probably go ahead and add in like a 4th choice band or maybe the 4th N. Probably the 4th N just to keep things a little more consistent. The Eevee and the Flareon, oh my gosh. First of all, this is the wrong Eevee. I played this Eevee, but it's not the one you should play. You should play the Eevee that has 1 retreat cost. I found this out in top 8 when I started Lone Eevee game 2, and it almost cost me the game because I had to keep manually attaching to retreat because I couldn't find a float stone, even though I run 3. And then I had to like attach a double colorless energy to it twice to retreat. It was just ridiculous. And I don't run a special charge, which is also a consideration if we cut one of the Shaymin EXs. So definitely something that I think I would do a little bit different if I could. But hey, I mean, you saw this weekend at the regional tournament, Metagross did really, really well. A couple of Decidueyes made top cut, and a couple of Lurantis made top cut. So Flareon would have been the right call in certain metas, but in this meta, it was actually the wrong call. I think in this meta, this deck struggles with Darkrai, it struggles with Umbreon. It can beat Zoroark, but it's still a pretty close game. It's nice you're only giving up one prize, and you can manage your bench the way that you do so that they can't get a knockout back. You can basically just keep it to where they only can do 100 damage. Now, of course, a Kukui kind of throws that off, but you have to have like 3 on the bench, unless you magically can just have like a Trevenant active with a Phantom and a Garbodor on the bench, and then you're ready to go. But most of the time, you're going to have a setup card on the bench as well. So you can manage it to where you've only got 3 on the bench, but that's probably about the least amount that you can do in this deck. Kukui was extremely good. I didn't use Hex Maniac at all, but I think it's definitely something that I want to keep in the list. Like I was saying, I have a hard time with some dark decks, Darkrai, Umbreon, and maybe Zoroark, even though I feel like that one's a little bit more winnable. So it all depends on where the meta goes, but it would be super easy for this deck to cut 1 Shaymin, 2 Eevee, and a Flareon, and add in 4 Passimian. That sounds super crazy and weird, but it basically would turn all Drampa matchups from like a 70-30 to basically an auto win. It would make Darkrai basically an auto win, and it would definitely help versus Zoroark variants, and it would make Umbreon a really good matchup as well. So if those decks aren't very popular, then there's no point in going towards Passimian. If they are very popular, then Passimian's actually not a bad play in this deck. I did a couple of test hands and a couple of test games on PTCGO afterwards, and it worked really well, actually. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing I could do here is just actually add in a 2-2 Zoroark myself. Zoroark can one-shot Darkrai because Turbo Darkrai likes to fill its bench, so they can move around their energies. So if they don't fill their bench, then Tapu Lele can take advantage of it. If they do fill their bench, Zoroark can take advantage of it. There's a little bit of synergy there. I do think that would help that matchup a little bit. Zoroark also can help versus Volcanium, and if that for some reason is a bad matchup. Zoroark helps versus Zoroark, which is always nice. Zoroark's not a bad option in this deck. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Or I could just go with consistency. I could cut the 2-1 Flareon and the 1 Shaymin and add in like an N, a special charge, a 4th choice band, and then, I don't know, maybe another field blower or something like that. I feel like 3 field blower is super strong. So anyways, that's just kind of what my thoughts are on the deck going forward. The meta changes daily. We see it from week to week as it plays out in tournaments, but really, honestly, it changes every day. A new list or concept comes out, or someone says something, and then everything's different. So I really like the deck. I think it's got a ton of potential. I think it utilizes Flareon as good or better than anything else, because if you're turning Trevenant or Garbodor into a fire type, I think that really, really, really hurts. So yeah, I really like it, and I was 602, came in first place, had a great time. And I really, really like the deck, and I hope you guys can play with it a little bit and find some success too. So thanks for watching, and always remember when you're playing Pokemon to have fun. Thanks, guys.